There are moments in life when betrayal comes from exactly where you expected loyalty. A stranger can hurt you. A competitor can try to destroy you. An enemy can attack you. But when your own family decides you no longer belong, the wound cuts deeper than any financial loss ever could. Years ago, a woman named Sarah Walker walked into the headquarters of the company her grandfather had built with his own hands. She believed she was attending another routine leadership meeting. She had spent nearly 2 decades helping grow the business. She had worked weekends, sacrificed vacations, missed birthdays, and carried responsibilities that many employees twice her age would have struggled to handle. She thought she was helping protect a family legacy. Instead, she was walking into an ambush that would change the course of her life forever. Before that meeting ended, Sarah would lose her position, her income, her future, and the family she thought she knew. The people responsible were not competitors. They were not hostile investors. They were not outsiders looking to seize control. They were her father, her brother, and several relatives sitting around the same conference table where they had celebrated company milestones together for years. What happened next would leave Sarah standing outside the building carrying a cardboard box while employees watched through the windows in complete disbelief. And yet, as devastating as that day was, it was only the beginning. Because years later, after the same family had erased her from the company and tried to rewrite history, they would make a phone call they never imagined they would have to make. They would beg her to come back. The question is why? What could possibly happen inside a successful family business that would force the people who threw her away to come crawling back years later? What secret decisions were made after Sarah left? What mistakes nearly destroyed a company that had survived for generations? And why did the very people who claimed she was the problem eventually discover that she had been the one holding everything together all along? Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how everything fell apart, we need to go back long before Sarah was escorted out of the building. We need to go back to a small manufacturing company founded in the American Midwest during a time when success was earned through long hours, persistence, and sacrifice. The company started in a modest warehouse. Sarah's grandfather, Robert Walker, built it from almost nothing. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't handed opportunities. Like many business owners of his generation, he spent years taking risks that could have ended in failure. There were times when he wasn't sure he could make payroll. There were months when he worked 7 days a week without taking a single day off. Yet somehow he managed to turn a struggling operation into a respected regional company, employing hundreds of people. As the business grew, so did the family's pride. The company became more than a source of income. It became part of the family's identity. Holiday gatherings often included discussions about contracts, customers, expansion plans, and company goals. Children grew up hearing stories about how their grandfather built everything from scratch. They were reminded repeatedly that the business represented hard work, loyalty, and family values. For years, everyone believed those values would continue into the next generation. Among all the grandchildren, Sarah seemed to understand those values better than anyone else. From a young age, she showed an unusual interest in the company. While other children spent summers on vacation, Sarah often volunteered to help around the office. Employees remembered her filing paperwork, organizing records, and asking questions about how different departments operated. As she grew older, her interest only deepened. After college, she chose to join the family business full-time. She wasn't looking for an easy paycheck. She genuinely believed she could help continue her grandfather's legacy. At first, her future seemed bright. Managers respected her work ethic. Employees appreciated how she treated people. Customers enjoyed working with her because she listened carefully and followed through on promises. Over time, she became one of the company's most effective leaders. Revenue increased in departments she supervised. Employee retention improved. Major clients specifically requested meetings with her. Even people outside the company began assuming she would eventually become the next leader of the organization. But there was one person who viewed Sarah's success very differently. That person was her older brother, Michael. And the more successful Sarah became, the more dangerous that relationship would become. That person was her older brother, Michael. And the more successful Sarah became, the more dangerous that relationship would become. At first, the tension between them was easy to miss. Family members brushed it aside as normal sibling rivalry. Michael had been part of the business longer, and many assumed he simply needed time to adjust to Sarah's growing influence. But employees began noticing small things. During meetings, Michael interrupted her presentations. When clients complimented her work, he found ways to redirect attention toward himself. If a project succeeded, he emphasized the efforts of his own team. If a project encountered difficulties, he quietly suggested that Sarah had made poor decisions. None of it seemed serious on its own. Yet over time, these incidents became impossible to ignore. Sarah tried to avoid conflict. She believed results would speak louder than politics. For years, that strategy worked. The company continued growing, and her reputation strengthened. Several board members privately praised her leadership. Some even hinted that she would eventually become chief executive. Those conversations never reached Michael directly, but news has a way of traveling through organizations. The more people talked about Sarah's future, the more determined Michael became to protect his position. What made the situation worse was their father's attitude. Thomas Walker had spent decades inside the company. He respected Sarah's intelligence and work ethic, but he also carried beliefs shaped by an earlier generation. Deep down, he had always imagined his son leading the business. He never said it openly. He never announced it during meetings. Yet his actions revealed where his loyalties truly rested. Whenever disagreements occurred, Michael received the benefit of the doubt. Whenever Sarah challenged a decision, she was accused of being difficult. Small patterns gradually became company culture. Years passed, and the divide widened. Then came the contract that changed everything. The company was pursuing one of the largest deals in its history. Winning it would secure growth for years. Several executives were assigned to the project, but Sarah quickly emerged as the driving force behind negotiations. She spent months traveling, meeting stakeholders, solving problems, and building trust with the client. Employees later recalled seeing her arrive before sunrise and leave long after dark. Everyone knew how much effort she invested. When the contract was finally signed, the celebration was enormous. Employees gathered in the headquarters auditorium. Executives gave speeches. The board congratulated leadership teams. But during the ceremony, something unexpected happened. As Sarah sat in the audience, Michael stepped onto the stage and accepted nearly all the credit for the deal. He spoke for 20 minutes. He thanked departments across the company. He praised board members and managers. Yet Sarah's name was barely mentioned. People noticed. Some employees exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others assumed it was an oversight. Sarah herself chose not to react publicly. She smiled politely and joined the applause. But that evening, several senior managers privately apologized for what they had witnessed. That moment became a turning point. Michael realized he could reshape the narrative inside the company. If enough people believed he was responsible for the company's successes, his position would become secure regardless of actual performance. Over the next year, internal politics intensified. Sarah was excluded from key discussions. Important meetings suddenly appeared on calendars without her knowledge. Reports she normally reviewed were routed elsewhere. Decisions affecting her departments were made behind closed doors. Every week seemed to bring another obstacle. Then one morning, Sarah received an invitation to a special board meeting. The message contained no details. No agenda, no explanation, just a request for her presence. When she arrived, something immediately felt wrong. Several attorneys were sitting at the conference table. Board members avoided eye contact. The atmosphere was cold and strangely formal. Sarah took her seat and waited. Moments later, Thomas cleared his throat and began speaking. What followed felt unreal. The board claimed concerns had been raised about her leadership style. They alleged she had created division within the company. They questioned her commitment to organizational values. Some accusations were vague. Others were completely false. Sarah attempted to defend herself, but every explanation was dismissed. The outcome had already been decided before she entered the room. Then came the announcement. Her employment was being terminated effective immediately. For several seconds, she could not process what she had heard. This was not merely a job. It was her career, her family legacy, her future, and it had just been taken away. Security personnel appeared within minutes. She was instructed to collect personal belongings. Employees watched from hallways and office windows as she left the building carrying a cardboard box. No farewell gathering. No recognition. No gratitude. Just silence. The days that followed were even worse. Relatives stopped returning calls. Family gatherings became uncomfortable or disappeared entirely. Stories began circulating that Sarah had been removed because she was difficult to work with. Some people believed them. Others were afraid to question the official narrative. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah felt completely alone. Months passed. Savings began disappearing. Bills continued arriving. Job opportunities were limited because many people in the industry remained connected to the Walker family. The woman once considered the future leader of a thriving company suddenly found herself wondering how long she could stay financially afloat. Then something happened that changed the direction of her life. One evening, she received a call from a former client. The client had heard rumors about her departure and wanted to know what actually happened. After listening to her side of the story, he offered a consulting project. It was small. The payment was modest. But Sarah accepted immediately. She completed the project successfully. Then another client called. And another. Soon she had more work than she expected. What began as consulting slowly evolved into something larger. Sarah launched a new company. Unlike the business she left behind, this venture would be built entirely on her own decisions. There would be no family politics. No hidden agendas. No boardroom ambushes. The first year was difficult. The second year was better. By the third year, growth accelerated dramatically. Clients appreciated her honesty. Employees respected her leadership. Former colleagues quietly reached out asking whether positions were available. Many joined her organization. Meanwhile, problems were developing inside the Walker family business. Without Sarah's leadership, weaknesses became harder to hide. Projects ran over budget. Major clients expressed frustration. Employee turnover increased. Revenue growth slowed. Michael insisted everything was under control. But financial reports told a different story. Several risky investments failed. Debt increased. Expenses climbed. Board members grew nervous. Years of poor decisions gradually accumulated until they could no longer be ignored. Then the company lost one of its largest customers. The departure triggered a chain reaction. Banks requested additional documentation. Lenders reviewed financial performance more closely. Investors began asking difficult questions. The family business that once seemed unstoppable was suddenly facing a crisis. As pressure intensified, hidden problems surfaced. Some executives had concealed losses. Others manipulated forecasts. Several projects had been portrayed as profitable despite generating substantial losses. The deeper investigators looked, the worse the situation appeared. Emergency meetings became common. Arguments erupted behind closed doors. Board members blamed one another. Trust disappeared. For the first time in company history, the possibility of failure became real. And that was when Thomas Walker finally faced a painful truth. The daughter he had pushed aside had been one of the few people capable of preventing this disaster. Months later, Michael stared at a financial report showing numbers he could no longer explain away. The company was running out of options. Creditors were growing impatient. Employees feared layoffs. The future looked uncertain. That was the day he picked up the phone. Sarah almost ignored the call. When she heard her brother's voice, memories came rushing back. The humiliation, the betrayal, the years of struggle. Then Michael said words she never expected to hear. "We need your help." At first, she thought she had misunderstood. But he continued. The company was in trouble. The board wanted to meet. Her family wanted to discuss possible solutions. Sarah remained silent. Years earlier, they had dismissed her as a problem. Now they viewed her as a solution. The irony was impossible to ignore. Several weeks later, she entered the same boardroom where her career had been destroyed. Many of the faces were familiar. Only the power dynamic had changed. This time, nobody questioned her abilities. Nobody called her disruptive. Nobody accused her of creating division. Instead, they asked for guidance. As discussions continued, another revelation emerged. A longtime family attorney produced documents that had never been shown publicly. Among them was a letter written by Sarah's grandfather years before his death. The room became silent as the letter was read aloud. In it, Robert Walker described the qualities he believed were necessary to lead the company into the future. Integrity, discipline, vision, commitment. Then he identified the family member he believed best embodied those qualities. Sarah. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. For years, assumptions and politics had overshadowed the founder's wishes. Now the truth sat in front of everyone. No one could deny it. Several board members lowered their heads. Thomas appeared devastated. Michael said nothing. After the meeting ended, Sarah spent days reflecting on everything that had happened. She could save the company. She possessed the experience. She understood the business. Many employees still respected her. But another question remained. Should she? Eventually, she reached a decision. At the final meeting, every eye in the room focused on her. The board waited. Her family waited. Employees waited. Sarah thanked everyone for the opportunity to speak. Then she delivered her answer. She would not return. Not because she wanted revenge. Not because she hated her family. But because she had already built a new future. A future created without the approval of people who once believed she would fail. She explained that leadership requires trust, and trust cannot survive repeated betrayal. Then she stood up and prepared to leave. Before reaching the door, she turned toward the room one final time. The company wasn't lost when the money disappeared, she said. It was lost the moment families stopped valuing honesty. Nobody responded. Because deep down, everyone knew she was right. In the years that followed, the Walker family business never fully recovered. Parts of it were sold. Some operations survived under new ownership. Others disappeared entirely. Sarah's company continued growing. More importantly, she found peace. The success she achieved was no longer tied to a family name or a corporate title. It belonged entirely to her. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. The people who once threw her out eventually learned a lesson they would never forget. Sometimes the person you underestimate today becomes the person you desperately need tomorrow. And by the time you realize their value, it may already be too late. If you were in Sarah's position, would you have returned to save the family business? Or would you have walked away just as she did? Let us know in the comments below.